Hello and welcome back to Comedy Means Business. It's November 3rd and today we're taking a deep dive into the world of live event ticketing. Our guest is Danny Frenkel, co-founder and CEO of Punchup Live, whose platform is taking on the old guard in ticketing, offering comics a new model resulting in more ownership over their audience. Founded by Frenkel and Alex Dajani, a duo with history at Meta and Apple, Punchup offers comics the ability to know exactly where their fans are, both geographically and online, communicating directly with them to let them know when they'll be performing in their towns. Comics can thus more strategically route their tours while circumventing all the noise that comes with attempts to promote on social media platforms. The concept behind Punchup has been to re-envision the artist-fan relationship, ditching frustrations plaguing the broader ticketing ecosystem in favor of a more frictionless experience for all involved. Today on the podcast, Frenkel joins me to unpack all of it. The philosophy behind Punchup, the work that's gone into scaling the platform, the issues he sees with the big guns in ticketing, and the grand visions he has for disrupting the status quo. Danny, welcome.
Thanks so much.
Good to have you here. I wanted to talk about your journey first. Some of this I don't even know. We've talked quite a bit in the recent months, but where are you from, and how did you get to this place?
Wow, we're going real early.
Let's go back.
So I was born in Falls Church, Virginia. I got to this place. Really, I can go through, 0 to, 24. But really, the interesting part of it starts around 24. Yeah. I was working at Accenture. I was working in consulting for some U.S. government contracts, and it wasn't, I would say, the most interesting of all work. And at that time, Facebook was actually a company that a lot of people were using, but nobody really thought of it actually as a company. It was just kind of this network that you kind of joined when you were in college.
What year?
This is 2010.
Okay.
The honest story actually is I had a good friend of mine who was applying for a job. They were opening up an office in Austin. Uh-huh. And he said, you should move to Austin and do this with me. So I applied for that job. He unfortunately did not get that job because his mother picked up the phone while he was on the interview and said, hey, Julian, come pick up your laundry downstairs. And so he got exited from the interview process. I ended up actually changing my application to a job in New York and luckily got a job starting in advertising operations in 2010 at Facebook, where my job was essentially to build out all of the ads that were on the site by hand, essentially. There was no newsfeed ad. It was all on the right-hand side. It was extremely scrappy. I think there were about 1,000 employees at the time. And I spent the next 13 years of my life essentially at that company.
What was your sort of academic background? Is it like engineering?
No, not at all. I have a degree in economics and political science. Okay. It's kind of funny. I'm 39 years old, so it's always funny when people ask, what you studied when you were 18. It's it's not particularly relevant for anything in my life at this point, but...
True. I'm just curious, how you came to the specific kind of business area.
If we want to talk about education, I got really into game theory when I was in college. Mm-hmm. And I do think that, one of the core concepts of an economics degree is learning that people respond to incentives. And so that's been a bit of the guiding light, I would say, for most of my career, just understanding what the incentives are in any given situation. And then understanding there's a really great book by an author who actually now has some controversy called Dan Ariely. That's called Predictably Irrational. Uh-huh. That really changed the way that I think about things and approach problems. Because he gives, just as one example, if you see a pizza place that costs 99 cents or you see a pizza place that costs $1.50, you would expect everyone from an economic standpoint to go to the 99-cent place. But really, people might go to the $1.50 place because they might be like, is it better? Even though it could be the exact same pizza.
Right.
And so all these things, obviously have layered into just my general way of thinking, as have a lot of comedians, quite honestly. And so that all has an impact on how, I approach different problems these days. But it's not like I learned anything in school that has directly translated or been very formulaic of I learned about economics and now I know about touring.
So were you a comedy diehard from early on, or did that kind of come later?
I grew up in a weird house where my mother did not let us watch commercial television. And so I watched a lot of PBS, but we were allowed to listen to records. But then I went and saw a lot of comedy shows at the DC Improv when I was growing up. And I've just always loved comedy. I think I'm short, So going to concerts has always been a little bit difficult because I just end up looking at people's shoulders or the back of their heads. And so I've appreciated the seated environment of comedy. And I just really love like the thought process and the structure that goes into jokes. I've just always been a joke nerd.
Yeah.
And I really do mean that. Like a lot of comedians have like deeply impacted the way that I think about things.
What were the big takeaways you took from your time at Facebook?
Great question. So Facebook, especially in 2010, was a fascinating place. It still is, but like to have seen it go from, I don't know how many users there were in 2010, but a fraction of what there are today, and see it progress in multiple different stages. Like I wasn't there at the earliest stage, but like Facebook was founded in 2004. So I was there 6 years after it was started. It was still pretty small. I actually came up with some of the first proposals for political ads on Facebook. Like they weren't doing that at all at that time. I remember a point in time where a friend of mine was a lobbyist in DC, and he was talking about how Facebook was going to start potentially using lobbyists for some of their interests in DC. And I remember being like, there's no way Facebook is going to ever get into the lobbying game. Like, that's crazy. This is a different kind of company. And obviously things have taken slightly different turns. So, you know.
They're making a movie about it right now.
I know. Jeremy Strong.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing that I learned, honestly, and that Facebook deserves an enormous amount of credit for, I spent the entirety of my career on the ad side. And Google had always approached everything from an insights perspective. Google was kind of the incumbent, the big other ad player. And Google was really good at like giving people insights about, you know, where they should be running ads and just general like information that was interesting. Facebook took a very measurement-based approach. I spent a lot of my career at Facebook working for a guy named Brad Smallwood, who's a big pioneer in the ads measurement space. And it really ingrained in me this need to be able to prove out value, and has been one of the cornerstones of the company, or Punchup.
Can you elaborate on that in terms of how the skills or the knowledge from that professional background came into your experience with Punchup?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, Facebook was really, really good at showing, hey, if you give us $1, that turns into $2, or that turns into $1.10, or whatever it is, essentially return on investment. And live entertainment, we can get more into the details of this, I'm sure, later, but like live entertainment is currently a world that's very hard to fall into the structure of proving out the exact return that you get if you put $1 in, because the overall chain of creating a live show and marketing it and selling it is so fragmented that it's hard to actually calculate it. So the number one thing that we have really invested in heavily is a data science team and a lot of infrastructure for being able to prove out where there is value along this chain and where there isn't.
To back up, like how did that come about, this jump to founding Punchup?
I mean, there's certain aspects, I would say, of my time at Facebook of just like learning also. Facebook is now a very large company. There's just no, like, I don't think that's saying anything anybody would dispute. And I think, you know, some part of Facebook started off when I was early at Facebook. There was this site called peace.facebook.com. And it was this like, oh my God, anything's possible. Like, you know, Indians and Pakistanis are going to end up friending each other on Facebook and we're going to have world peace. And I think that, you know, it's progressed in a different direction, I think, from creating world peace. And I think also, like, you know, it became a very large company. And so I guess in some ways this is what led me, where it's like I always thought that the goal when you work in tech is to start your own company. Like that's the part that has always really excited me and that I've always wanted to do. And so essentially, I guess leading into your question, starting Punchup, there were two main things that I really cared about. One was I wanted to do something that I felt really good about doing. And the second was I wanted it to be a good business. Because I think one of the things that I really took away from Facebook is a very, very good business. And it makes your life a lot easier when you are running a high-margin, successful business. And so it just makes the entire experience a lot more fun. It makes it easier to hire and just makes everything a lot smoother. So, going back to the first part, I am kind of sad, even for myself. Like, I'm horribly addicted to my phone. We were off camera actually just talking about our phones, and like you were actually talking about how much you love your phone, and not to guilt you on that. Like, I feel the same way. I am horribly addicted to it. And I don't like it. I'm also not delusional. Like, I am addicted and I can't stop looking at my phone. But one of the problems that I think right now of the stuff that is addicting us is that it's all based on this model of time spent, right? Like, most of the internet is based around advertising. This is, something that I did learn at Facebook. There's very few businesses that are as efficient as advertising. And so as a result, everything kind of naturally gravitates towards that. You're even seeing it with Netflix right now, where they're now getting into the ad game, and they are now getting into the podcast game, and it's going to be much more activated towards time spent. And so something that really interested me was like, is there another alternative here? And you're seeing actually like Patreon's CEO, Jack Conte, talk about this a bit, where he's like, I want to not have content that angles towards time spent. I want content that people are willing to buy. I have some thoughts around how that is as a strategy, and I want to try to do something different, which is ultimately like, I'm not delusional enough to think that people are going to stop looking at their phones and people are going to stop watching content, but I want to show people content that actually gets people off their phones.
Right.
So I want, like, the dream for Punchup is that you come to Punchup, you see a new comedian or a comedian that you already know, you see their content, you see that we have a cool overlay that shows you when they're coming locally for you, or we have a whole bunch of tour dates. Like, the entire site is just geared around finding shows. Mm-hmm. And then you get off your phone 30 seconds later after easily buying a ticket, and then you go to a show.
Yeah.
Because, like, live entertainment is one of the few times in life these days, and less so you go to concerts and everybody's filming the whole time. But a comedy show, no one is on their phones. It is like a magical, very unique thing. I don't think there's any other time that exists. Even now we have Wi-Fi on planes. Louis C.K.
People
bit.
take out their phones for music, for concerts, but thankfully not as much for comedy. They even lock them away.
Totally.
Which is cool.
It was actually crazy. I went to go see Tedeschi Trucks Band a few months ago. And I'm in, I think it was the Beacon Theater. I could get that wrong. And I bought a good ticket, and I went by myself because all my friends are married, and, it's hard to get people to go to things. And I'm sitting next to two, like, 70 or 80-year-olds who are on their phones the whole time during the concert. I had to talk to them, like, get the fuck, you're killing me here. And also, like, they were filming the whole time, and I'm like, you're like 80 years old. How many times are you going to go back and watch this thing? Like, what are we doing here?
Never.
So I really believe in this thing of, like, let's just find productive ways to get people off their phones. And while those two people might be bad examples, on average, people at concerts are on their phones less than they are outside of concerts. And so that is really where, like, the part that I feel really good about comes in, of, wanting to find ways and find new models that don't just try to suck us in.
To support a live ecosystem.
Support a live ecosystem. And on the business side, like, luckily it goes together because, you wrote an article on this a couple weeks ago. AI, I think it's still very early. We don't know exactly how it's going to go, but is inevitably going to create a ton of content and just flood everything. And it's going to get really good. Like, you're already seeing some examples of it that, like, really are impressive, and I am watching them, so it is taking up my time. But there's not going to be anything that can take over live entertainment from an algorithmic standpoint. Yeah. Because, they kind of tried with the Tupac hologram at Coachella 15 years ago or whatever it was, and everybody made fun of it. So I think that, like, it will be a very durable business, and one that, I think is only going to grow in demand because people are going to be spending more and more time on their phones. They want some kind of a cleanser of sorts.
Right. And with Punchup, it originated from you acquiring a different ticketing company and sort of molding it into what you wanted. Is that right?
That came much later. Okay. The truth is, I started Punchup because Louis C.K. had started selling specials directly to fans. I'm going to mess up the time. 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was, like, a really interesting thing because not only did he do that, he did a really great job of sending emails that, like, made me feel like I kind of knew him. And it worked really well. Like, he would send an email and be like, holy shit, I sold $1 million worth of my special in the first 24 hours. And then, throughout the years, he would use that email list to sell shows. And when he had problems, he was able to still sell shows without having any, larger infrastructure because he now has this massive email list.
Right.
And so I started thinking through, like, how that actually worked. So Louis C.K. was by far the biggest comedian in the world in, 2010 to 18.
Right.
And so he was able to sell a lot of content. By selling content, he was able to get a whole bunch of emails. Most comedians both do not have the large fan base that Louis had, so they wouldn't have been able to get that many emails. And most comedians can't really sell that much content. We're starting to experiment here, and like I'm seeing some positive stuff, but like being honest, most comedians can't sell $1 million worth of their special.
Yeah.
So the question was like, how do you take what he did and make it work for more people? And so the idea was, all right, one, you need a network. You need a way for comedians to be able to pool their audiences together so that everybody benefits. This is the same thing that happens on Instagram, where people post content and someone discovers a new comedian because they came to watch a different comedian. The difference is that in our network, it's just comedians and it's just repped comedians. That's the way that we're trying to basically solve the moderation issues, where you don't have random people posting nonsense.
Is it invite only?
It's invite only.
Yeah.
We're going to be rolling out some larger plans here, but we are going to maintain this. You need to be an agent, or you need to have an agent or a manager, just as a way of like them kind of giving an approval of sorts of like, that's easier than us going through and looking through their material. I don't want to do that. And then the second key piece is, how do you have a model that supports free content? Because, again, if most people aren't going to be buying content, you need a way where it's free. And that was where this idea came in, again, of like, if you look at every website that you go to right now to buy something, they'll say, sign up for our mailing list and you get 15% off. And so it was like, all right, how can we come up with a model there around probably content, where it's like, if you sign up for their mailing list, then you get access to content or deals or discounts or membership or whatever. And that was kind of the origin of it. Ironically enough, I scoped the whole thing out for Joe DeRosa, who's still not on the platform, but shout out. I thought his last special was fantastic.
It was amazing.
So yeah, that was kind of the origin. And it's just, I didn't know that ticketing was kind of the answer. Transparently, I knew that this would be of value. And so we started off with just this idea of helping them collect a lot of data and helping them understand like what's actually driving ticket sales. And I figured we could have some sort of like a data subscription that eventually we could charge for, or we would kind of figure it out. And I had a talk with a VC who basically told me, he's like, listen, if you're that good at predicting shows, and the answer is just go rent the venues and then you can sell the shows and take on all the risk. He basically was like, you want to take on as much risk as possible. Okay. And I was thinking about that, but it seemed kind of complicated to do. So instead, I realized the much simpler path, rather than like having to go rent venues and figure it all out, was like just do the ticketing myself and create a ticketing platform. And then we got very lucky and acquired a fantastic ticketing company.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but like let's expand on the core functionalities of Punchup. Can you explain that in more depth? Like the different things you can get out of it, both as a comic and as a consumer of comedy?
Yeah. So very plainly, you can watch content. We have a really popular now nearby shows feature, which also is available at nearbycomedy.com, I believe, where there's just no good aggregation of like shows that are happening locally. So anytime you're looking for comedy, you can go to punchup.live/nearby or nearby comedy. And on top of that, we have a whole integrated ticketing system. So we're live with a few clubs. We're about to be going live with a lot more, where people can seamlessly watch content and then with one click of the button, go purchase a ticket without having to create an account and use Apple Pay, and the whole thing is extremely seamless. It's actually crazy. Like,
you don't need, do you sign up? You
do not need to sign up.
Okay.
You have to sign up for a comedian's mailing list to be able to watch their content. But the whole point is, like, again, we want as many tickets getting sold as possible, so we make it as frictionless as you possibly can. Right. We have a 78% conversion rate of someone clicking to buy a ticket and then ending up buying a ticket, which is about 2 times higher than any other ticketing company that we've been able to measure. Mm-hmm. So, like, the whole thing is around just, like, how do we make this as simple and seamless as possible?
Yeah.
And then outside of that, we have an entire back end that we give to the comedians and to their managers and agents that include like a special back end of our app where they can email folks, they can text folks who sign up for the mailing list, they can get a whole bunch of insights of where people are watching their content, where they're buying tickets, where they are signing up for their mailing list. And then similarly on the desktop, we show them which data sources, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, et cetera, are actually driving their ticket sales. Mm-hmm. Because going back to Facebook, something that I learned at Facebook is there's a very large difference between people who click on ads and who end up actually buying a good. Some people, as weird as it sounds, some people are just really prone to clicking on ads. They tend to be older people.
Yeah.
And similarly, there's a lot of people who watch content
Yeah.
and don't end up actually buying tickets. And so we want to show people not just where you have a lot of likes on Instagram, but what is actually driving people to buy your tickets when you post on Instagram.
And so what do you do with that information? Give an example.
Sure. One of our earlier examples, so Sam Morrell was, a very early adopter of ours. And so we were working with him to figure out how to sell out, I think it is still his largest show to date, the MSG Theater. This was probably 2 years ago now. And essentially, we were able to dial in on exactly when he was selling content. So for him, it was like posting a grid post on Instagram and then a story right afterwards, where the story was very New York-centric content. The grid post, we just tried to figure out what was performing really well. And we noticed that there was this loose correlation. Then we were able to dial in on which days of the week he was selling the most. Mm-hmm. And then we were able to figure out, I guess I already touched on this, but like which platforms it happened to be Instagram for him. So we were able to be like, yes, we're like, you got a month and a half. Let's really dial this in. Let's save all the really good content for your high ticketing days.
Content in terms of what? What did that look like for him?
There were specific kinds of photos in the story that were doing really well for him. And there were specific kinds of content on the grids posts as well that were doing well. I don't want to give away some of his stuff. But yeah, and it worked really well. I mean, like he ended up selling out the show. And he and I still work really closely together on, his posting strategy. For others, we give them a lot more access to the self-service tools. I try really hard to talk to every comedian who's interested in diving into it. But the goal is eventually in the long run to make all of this really seamless where we can even automate it for them. So we have a bunch of really cool tools coming out. We're going to be able to post through Punchup to all these different social platforms so that we can learn even more so like what exactly is working best for this specific comedian. And then we can give really prescriptive guidance. We have some really cool AI tooling that's going to be coming out. Where we can even automate some of this for them, where it's just like, hey, give us a whole bunch of different photos. We can start to suggest, when they should be posting, what kind of copy works best. So, like, fundamentally, I talked about what I wanted to be doing, and I talked about, like, the business overall, but also for artists, like, something that has changed dramatically and is, like, a big opportunity for us is, it used to be you would look at Madison Square Garden to see who was playing, and like that's how you decide what show to go see. Mm-hmm. It's shifted entirely now to the artist being first. Exactly. Yeah. And so we're trying to help them make the most of that while also allowing them to still be artists, because that also stinks. Right. Like, you didn't sign up to be a comedian to go deep into analytics and be like, all right, do people like when I post a baby photo at noon? Yeah. So we're trying to take all that out. It takes, we get some feedback like our player is not up to, par with YouTube or whatever, which is totally true. We've also been around 3 years, and YouTube's been around for 15. So we're slowly building all of these different pieces, but we have the foundation for everything. And we even have a prototype on this AI tool. So I'm really excited for this next year for us.
Yes. Did you mention the fact that you can sort of communicate directly with your fans?
I touched on it, but happy to go deeper with it. We have a whole bunch of messaging capabilities built in. Yeah. So one of the key pieces is social media companies in general are a time spent animal. They also have to be wary of giving too much power essentially to any one creator, right? If everyone is coming to YouTube or to TikTok to watch one person, then all of a sudden that platform is extremely dependent on that one person. So everyone notices there's like kind of this cyclical nature to social media reach and success. And so, that's fair. They are providing a service for free. You're able to reach a whole bunch of people. You are playing on their turf. Right. What we are trying to do is help them also capture a whole bunch of information on their fans so that they can more reliably reach out to them. Something that did come from Facebook as well is like I did a lot of work on the privacy side. And I can nerd out with you on identifiers on the internet, but like one of the key things that is extremely consistent on the internet, which now actually sounds, is much more popular and I don't get as much pushback. When I first started talking about it, everyone was like, email is so outdated, this is insane. But email is, one of the best ways to reliably reach people. So we do a really good job of helping all these artists collect a whole bunch of emails. And then we have really cool tooling for helping them then use the emails they've collected to reach their audience. So right now, we just automatically organize all the emails they've collected based on where they're touring, but we're about to roll out a whole bunch of new functionality where they're going to be able to figure out like who are the people that watch their videos, who are the people that have signed up for the mailing list for the longest time, who are the recent folks, like a whole bunch of different ways of being able to engage with their fans. Because again, like some emails that you get might feel kind of spammy, but like I loved those early emails from Louis. Like it was so fun feeling like I was kind of on the ride.
They
with
were
him.
very intermittent. It's like he
They
would
were.
not spam you with them.
Totally. And I think that like artists don't want to spam anyone, but also like I liked getting those emails. I actually would probably be fine. Like that was one of the insights that I had is like I wanted Louis to be emailing me, if anything more. Like I liked getting them. And so being able to provide real an understanding from a data perspective of like, hey, this is actually something people want and it is performing really well, or like, hey, you are spamming. Like we do have some comedians who slightly abuse the emails, I would say. So like we need to be giving them guidance on like what's really working because all the incentives are aligned. Like you don't want to annoy anyone. You do want to sell more tickets. You do want to let your fans know when you're coming to town. And so just like finding what that equilibrium is really important.
Let's talk about the broader ecosystem. Like, where does Punchup fall in that, and what are the pain points in the broader ticketing ecosystem that you're kind of responding to and trying to address?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is live entertainment is an e-commerce business. So much like the person who sold you that shirt, they are trying to sell a good online. The difference is that the person who sold you that shirt owns the website where people are transacting for that shirt. And so they can be like, all right, cool, we tried green, let's try blue, let's try saying it's eco-friendly, let's drop the price by $2. And they can actually understand if that increases or decreases sales. The problem on the live entertainment side is everything is so fragmented because you have the artist, who we talked about as the best marketer of their goods. Then you have them selling on a ticketing platform that they don't own.
Right.
And then they are selling inventory that they don't control. And so there's no communication or overlap of the data to really understand what is or is not working. And so what we're ultimately trying to do is bring all of that together under the same umbrella so that we can demystify and highlight like where there's a whole bunch of inefficiencies and just make a better ticket buying experience overall. Like we talked about how much I love live entertainment at the start of this. I think the irony is like live entertainment is the best, and I don't think anybody thinks buying tickets to live entertainment is the best. And so we're trying to bring those two things a little bit more in tune.
Yeah, it's such a frustrating experience, right? Like there's additional fees often, and it's beyond that. It's just like very confusing and hard to find what you want, I guess.
Totally.
You don't even know where people are going to be. The internet in general right now is just like such a confusing mess. It's like, how are you going to keep track of the things you are interested in? It doesn't seem like a very easy process.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of problems there that you're kind of highlighting. Like one is it's just in many cases a really bad conversion flow. Because again, there's perverse incentives because not everyone is aligned, right? Like the ticketing company might want to be gaining a whole bunch of users for themselves rather than just helping the artist sell as many tickets. On the discovery piece, again, you're dependent on these platforms who ultimately their clients are advertisers, not the performers. And so it's just interesting if you really take it back where it's like the real people that we are trying to serve are the fans, the venues, and the artists.
Yeah.
And as long as you like are very clear on everything that you're doing of like, does it benefit those three folks? Like it becomes a lot easier to be like, are we designing a good experience or a bad one?
How exactly does Punchup make money?
Yeah. So the whole premise of Punchup is that we do not want to be an additional expense for artists. So instead of charging them a monthly fee to use our services, instead what it is like they're already big businesses themselves. They're selling tickets, they're selling content, they're selling merch. And so the idea is by doing all of that on our platform, we can actually use the data to help them sell more content, more tickets, and more merch, and then take the percentage that everybody else was making on that previously. But because we're doing all of it, like we can potentially even offer better deals.
Okay. One of the things people have said to me about the platform is like they want to see emerging comics breaking through on it. Like it's one thing to have you just added Shane Gillis to the platform, right? Which is like
We did.
one of the congratulations. He's one of the biggest comics in the world. That's a big stamp of approval. But like Like, what does it take to get an emerging comic, like, on the lower level to see success with Punchup?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's a lot easier, right? Like Shane Gillis is already, one of the most successful touring comedians out there. So, for us to make a significant dent on his business is objectively more difficult.
You're predominantly operating in the club space, right? And he's operating in the theater and arena.
He's in the
levels?
arena space. No, we're helping everybody across the board. We are not doing any ticketing at the theater or arena level.
Yeah.
Although there's some fun news coming out on the theater side.
Okay.
But certainly not the arena level.
So you are providing analytics?
We're providing analytics.
Okay.
Yes, for sure.
Gotcha.
And so we can help him understand, but he's got an amazing business. So I don't like over-promising on things. We will certainly help, but again, if you're already one of the top touring comedians, you're still going to be one of the top touring comedians after you join Punchup. But, we have almost 1 million people coming to the site every month now. And so it is additional exposure and additional people knowing when he's coming to town. So it certainly does not help. And that's kind of why I think you're seeing all of the larger comedians now really engage as well. Because,
who are some of the other
there's no
big ones
downside.
who have joined?
We have, I believe, the only known web space for Larry David.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that was a big one for me. Again, it's not like he's like putting unreleased episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm on there, but
Sure.
he has a presence, and that's incredibly exciting for me. We have Sam Morril, Mark Norman, Whitney Cummings, Tom Segura. I don't want to leave anyone out. So there's a lot of people who are
Sure.
on the platform now that are obviously very large. On the smaller comedian side, I'm actually really excited about that. I actually think they're the ones that are able to feel the benefit immediately, because while they might not get an email list of 40,000 people in the first month, they're trying to sell tickets. So they're trying to go from selling 15 tickets to 30 tickets. And if anything like that, that's actually our sweet spot, is
really?
being able to help them get exposure to a whole bunch of new people who now want to go sell their tickets. It's a lot easier to convince 15 people to go do something than 15,000.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm actually really excited on the progress that we're seeing on the smaller comedian side.
Tell me more about some of the success stories. Like, who are some of the comedians who have adopted it and seen the biggest results, I guess, specifically working with you?
I want to be careful because I don't want to take credit for the
fair.
comedians. And I think that, part of the reality, again, just, objectively speaking, if you're not funny, I'm not going to help you sell tickets. The only real responsibility that I see is helping a comedian get exposed to people who will think they're funny, and then making sure that those people who find that comedian funny know when they're coming to town.
Right.
So, we can talk through the success. We helped Rachel Feinstein sell out her Netflix special. Rachel Feinstein is still an incredibly funny person and, deserved to sell that out without us. But, we certainly helped get her more exposure. And there was another filming of a special that did not have our help, that needed a lot more, that had a lot less capacity, let's say. Mark Norman sold out 2 Beacon Theater shows. We definitely helped him with that. He also had, a bunch of great service from his agency. So, yeah, again, I don't want to pretend like we're the difference between someone having a career and not having a career.
Yeah.
But we certainly can help.
Was there one moment? What was the first moment you were like, "Oh man, we did it"? Someone's getting a little pop off of the working with you, though.
The first one, and again, I want to be careful on taking too much credit because, it's ultimately the comedians writing the jokes. But I think that we really did help Sam Morril with that MSG Theater show. That was a really exciting one. We also have been very early on helping comedians run ads a lot better. There's a lot of structural problems with the way that marketing is done, paid media, for live touring, and we've figured out some really unique ways of using all of specifically Instagram and Facebook. That's unfortunately that's my background. That's what I know really well. So we actually need to get better on probably the Google side and a bit more on TikTok and Reddit. But on Facebook and Instagram, we found some really cool workarounds because the real problem is you can't actually place what's called a pixel or conversions API on most ticketing platforms.
Which is what?
So the way that advertising works in an efficient way. You can think about in most ad systems are like this. They don't know anything about the person who's advertising at all. all they know is like, what is the thing that we want someone to do? And then they kind of work backwards between like, all right, you want someone to do this action. Let's go find other people who look like the people who are taking this action and show this ad to them. And that's how we're going to get more people to take this action. The problem is if you just want people to click on an ad, and this goes back to the point of like some people just click on ads, and you are just telling the system, hey, this is a video of me that sends someone to the ticket site. You will get a ton of people who are just clicking on an ad, a ton of people. And very few people will end up actually buying tickets. Mm-hmm. And that's like the thing that's really frustrated comedians for a long time. The ideal way that you do it is you place a pixel on the ticketing site. And so that way it's a snippet of code that you can place on an external website that then will send data back to the advertising platform that will say, hey, Matt Grober just bought a ticket here. Yeah. Go find other people who look like him. The problem is you can't do that because they won't let you do it in a lot of instances. And so we found a workaround essentially for still giving the system the data that it needs to find the right kind of people to be showing the ad to of folks who actually want to buy tickets while still being able to respect privacy.
What are some of the other common mistakes you see comics making when trying to scale their business?
I think a big thing that we see is just like misunderstanding the right times and the right places to be doing promotion versus just growing your audience. Mm-hmm. Again, talking about the system. So, everybody is like the algorithm is like this boogeyman of sorts. And really all it is just a black box of code, essentially. Like that's what machine learning really is. And you just tell it what outputs you want. And so if you think about it, going back to our whole discussion around time spent, for the most part, this black box is just like, all right, how do we get people to stay on this platform as long as possible? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't know anything about you. There's no loyalty. There's no like grand conspiracy of like, we just don't like people who, have cool mustaches or whatever. But really what it is just like, all right, if we show Matt's content, what are the odds that people are going to stick around to watch more content? And it's just doing that calculation because at any given moment when you're refreshing your feed, there's 5,000 things that it could be showing you. And so the question is if you put a promo in your grid post that is just talking about Tulsa, Oklahoma, that is going to be relevant to people in Tulsa, Oklahoma and no one else. Yeah. So it's not going to do very well. Okay. The system doesn't know that. The next time it goes to be like, all right, should I show Matt's content? It's going to be like, hey, the last time this guy posted something, it didn't do very well, so we probably shouldn't show it. We should show someone else who's dancing or whatever is popular these days. And so, the thing that I really try to help comics understand is like how to balance the need to promo their shows with making sure that like they're posting content that is widely relevant so that they don't kind of get dinged.
Sorry, what would you have done to the Tulsa post?
I mean, ideally, the real dream is that you basically use – are you familiar with the marketing funnel?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the very top, you have discovery, and at the very bottom of it, you have conversion. And so for those watching at home, there's like this, upside-down triangle of sorts. So the dream is that you really use social media as the discovery portion. You're getting exposed to billions of people. Punchup has almost 1 million, but like that is a tiny fraction of 1 billion. And so you want to use that as a way for people to get exposure to you. And then you want to be able to get as much reliable contact information of those people who like you as possible. Mm-hmm. In practice, everybody is hesitant to be giving out, emails and phone numbers. So you will get a meaningful portion if you give them the right carrot, which in our case is content. But you also need to be able to post on these platforms. So the answer is essentially you need to balance it. You need to figure out how to make promo engaging, entertaining. Andrew Schultz is one of the best at this. Yeah. Like every time that he does, whether it's a Netflix one or just even particular big gigs, like he makes them really, really good. Yeah. So it's balancing that and then also using the right surfaces on the platforms. Yeah. To actually capture the conversions.
What has been the process to get comics to buy into the platform? Like, what kind of conversations have you had?
Ooh, that sucked. Oh my God, it was so brutal. I mean, like, I tell everybody this where it's like, I'm never starting another company ever again. I don't understand people who start companies multiple times. I have no idea how you could do that because it was so painful. I had no real entertainment context. I was lucky. Steve Byrne is a comedian that I recognized in a bar in 2010 and stayed in touch with. And he was the first comic on. He essentially started the company with us. Like he was very supportive and gave us our first piece of content. Would not have been possible without him. but it was still, and he was really good about getting us, intros to other comedians. But it was an enormous pain. Can I curse? It was an enormous pain in the ass.
Yes.
I had to. I just spent all day calling people. Nobody returned my phone calls. I was in my basement in Brooklyn, just like reaching out to everyone possible. It sucked. So it took 6 months essentially for anybody to really start kind of gaining some adoption. Sam Morrell was super huge. I was actually in my.
Did you get to know them through talking to them about this, or you knew them already, Sam and Mark
I
Norman?
had lunch with Sam previously. We did not know each other, and I thought he hated me, if I'm being honest. So I had reached back out to him. Joe, the big break I actually was, I had known Joe List. This is a funny story, actually. The other comedians that I knew, like I said, I was a big comedy nerd. So this is 2014. Sheryl Sandberg had just put out her book, Lean In. And so it was a very, it was an interesting time at Facebook in terms of, you just didn't want to do anything that would come off insensitive.
Sure.
I get invited to go on Bobby Kelly's You Know What Dude podcast because I had been helping out a different comedian named Josh Sneed who's like, you should meet Bobby. Yeah. I had no idea what a podcast was. This is before podcasts were really big.
Yeah.
Wow. And so I thought I was kind of going to a show. And so I show up and it's just a table, Joe List, Bobby Kelly. I forget who the other people are who are there. And I showed up a little bit late, and I go to sit down, and there's a headphone set and a mic and cameras, and they're analyzing the Miss Delaware porn tape.
Uh-huh.
And I start having a panic attack on camera because they say this is Danny from Facebook. And I'm just sitting there in my head. I'm just like, oh my God. If, they said my name, they said where I work, they're analyzing her, deep throat abilities. And I'm just having a meltdown, literally on camera. I went back and watched it one time and I had kind of PTSD from the whole thing. But I was just drenched
because you just thought
in sweat.
Your career's over.
The whole thing is done. This is a nightmare. I don't even know what the hell this is. I didn't know if it was being live streamed.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. And I literally in the middle of the podcast just threw down my headphones. I thought I was going to pass out. Threw down my headphones and just walked out. And this very nice Australian comedian, I forget her name, but she will always be an angel to me, comes out and is like, are you okay? And I was like, you guys said my name. You said where I work. You got to edit me out of this whole thing. And so they did, to Bobby Kelly's credit. And it was one of the worst episodes. It made no sense. They were just cutting out every time that I was shown. So I knew, long story short, I knew Bobby Kelly kind of, and I knew Joe List. And so I actually reached out to Joe List early on. And I was like, hey, Joe, I'm doing this thing. I reached out on Instagram and I was like, I don't know if you remember me, but he was like, oh my God, we talk about that all the time. So he definitely had remembered me. So that was, I guess, a blessing. And Joe List had a problem when he said the C word in his YouTube special.
Demonetized?
And he got demonetized. Yeah. And so, the momentum cratered. And so I was able to, convince him and his manager, who's been a very, very helpful resource for me. You met with them both.
Yeah.
To get him to put the special on Punchup, and that was actually really our first big break.
Okay, interesting. What about with venues? What is the dynamic exactly? You are selling tickets on your platform for a lot of clubs, right? And they are also hosting it on their sites, or
yeah, we're trying to make this a win-win situation for everyone. So it's interesting going back to Ticketmaster actually. So there's a really good book called Ticketmasters that I recommend people read.
Yeah.
Ticketmaster's big innovation was realizing and I forget the name of the previous ticketing company, but there was a ticketing company that was charging, let's say, 50 cents in service fees because they were providing a service, they were facilitating all the tickets. And Ticketmaster came in and went to venues and was like, what if we offer you $1? What if we do $1.50 service fee?
Yeah. But
we give you 50 cents of that service fee. And so, all of a sudden, they're able to basically help venues make more money. And there's obviously been a lot of stuff ever since then. But, that was a really, interesting business move on their part.
It led to this whole model now where it's the venues are tied into the ticket sellers, right?
Yeah. It's not a monolith. There's a whole bunch of different models. But, that was certainly a big progression in ticketing. What we're doing is actually very different. So we talked about a second ago how, it used to be you go to Madison Square Garden. Now it's all based on the artists themselves. We are trying to help the artists be really efficient from a marketing perspective. We now have almost 1 million people coming to the site every month. So we can really help channel awareness of different shows and ultimately save a ton of money on marketing by helping people sell more tickets from our baked-in audience. So the idea for us is venues can have their website where we have a best-in-class ticketing service. They can have a page on Punchup where they can also sell tickets from the exact same inventory, manage it all from one unified place. And they can also have direct tie-ins to a lot of the comedians who are using us essentially as their websites. And so this begins to unlock a lot of the full funnel visibility that we talked about, from like someone discovering a new comedian or discovering a new clip from a comedian they already knew, and then end up actually buying that ticket. Or it can be like, hey, they just know they want to go to, the Laugh Factory, and so they go to the Laugh Factory's page and buy directly there. We can really start to illuminate, what actually causes people to buy tickets.
What is the expansion strategy? Like there are obstacles in a sense you have to work around because, like I said, like certain venues will have contracts, right, with like Ticketmaster, for example. So how do you scale this? Like from working in a lot of clubs to getting into theaters and maybe even arenas, like what is the thought process?
Yeah, the thought process is essentially like two things. One, measuring where there's inefficiencies and then trying to provide solutions to close those inefficiencies. Much like, that first innovation on the Ticketmaster side of like, hey, we can basically make more money for venues. Our strategy is like, hey, we can save a lot of money or help you sell a lot more tickets. And so at the end of the day, like, I'm not going back to the whole point of like, I'm not delusional enough to think that people are going to stop watching content. I'm not delusional enough to think that whether it's venues or artists are going to accept making less money. The question is, if they are wasting a lot of money, can we redirect a lot of that into a more efficient manner, whether it is on the marketing side, whether it is on the conversion side, whether it is on the overall like understanding where to tour, what capacity, what price points you should be charging. And through that efficiency, everyone makes more money. And so we can, therefore be providing services that enable that.
So the only way, because it's kind of a David versus Goliath scenario, right? Like Ticketmaster, for example, not to be specific with them, but like they've been around for decades. So it's like in order to kind of be a bigger player in this space, it's just simply about showing where the efficiencies are and like how you can provide that.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty far from Ticketmaster even knowing about us, quite honestly. But, I think two things. One, it's kind of going back to that Facebook point. We believe in measuring everything. And so we can show incremental gains, essentially. And the second part is, when I started the company, I didn't know exactly how everything was going to go. And I've basically just been able to figure out what the problem is in any given state. And I think that that's a bit of confidence that I've now built of like, I know what the problems are in the comedy space. We are going to be moving into other verticals and we are slowly figuring out like what the problems are that exist in all these other places. And so we will continue to design a lot of the best-in-class solutions to help solve those problems. It's also like a really lucky time to be building a company. I have no idea what the world looks like when AI is like completely baked in, but right now it's awesome actually next week. Yeah, well, it is going to come quick, but like this moment right now is fantastic because you're actually able to build incredibly sophisticated stuff with far fewer resources than you ever needed. And it's just a really unique time because the sense of idealism, I think, in a lot of the larger tech companies has somewhat gone out the window. Like, again, I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know. There have been a ton of layoffs and, the mentality of those companies has changed. And so there's a lot of people that are looking for jobs that, make them feel fulfilled in a different way. And so we're just kind of lucky.
Mass disruption.
Totally. Yeah, I mean everything. The distribution channels, the way you build things, the way you market things, like it's awesome. It's like going back to the kind of the game theory piece, like that's what's so fun. It's just like understanding what all the different levers are and like what you have a comparative advantage in, where your weaknesses are. Like that's the stuff that I geek out on and are, really causing strains in my ability to sleep at night.
Yeah. So more than ever, it's probably like impossible to predict 5 years out from now. But like, what is your vision for the company 5 years from now?
Ooh. I mean, my dream is like I essentially want to build the Amazon of live entertainment, which is a closed ecosystem, and it's a place where everybody knows where to go, and it's as great an experience. Like I am not passing moral judgment one way or the other on Amazon, to be clear, but like
their efficiency is phenomenal.
It's awesome, like you can go like it is crazy. Like objectively speaking, like if you were to go back in time and just be like forget even the phone. Like I'm sure cavemen would be impressed by the phone, but can you imagine showing cavemen like put in anything that you want in the world, and with one click, it will show up at your door sometimes in 1 hour. Like that is like bananas. Yeah. So I aspire to deliver that level of service just without all of the controversy behind how you're delivering that service.
All right. Well, it's a really fascinating subject and thing you're doing. So, Danny, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome.